Welcome to the BEASTwriter Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we're going to be discussing the trade between the New Orleans Saints and the San Francisco 49ers. So let's get started. For those who don't follow my podcast, I break it down into three parameters when I'm discussing trades. The first one is who are the players involved. The second is why it makes sense for both organizations or doesn't make sense for both organizations, and the instant gratification versus long-term gains. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the players. Who are the players involved? Well, this one involves 49ers Kwon Alexander and Kiko Alonso. Let's just start with Kwon Alexander. Kwon Alexander was a free agent that the San Francisco 49ers signed last offseason, inking him to a 4-year, $54 million contract with $27 million guaranteed. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, you would know that I didn't like the move, and the reason being that he was coming off a torn ACL the year prior, only playing in 7 games. So anytime you sign a player to a long-term contract like that, especially when they just are coming off a torn ACL, it could be damaged goods because 70 to 100,000 injuries that happen in the U.S. are non-contact, okay? So when you take that into account, it's take it a step further and you look at it from a medical standpoint, sports medicine standpoint, in that majority of ACL injuries have developed arthritis in the affected knee. And when you do that, that just is not very good in terms of looking at your NFL career and looking at the short-term instant gratification success versus the long-term gains, because over the course of time, as you know, ACL injuries are pretty serious injury. I mean, they're career-ending. So anytime that you hear the words ACL, anterior cruciate ligament, things like that, you know it's bad news. So I thought he was damaged goods to begin with, and as a result, I think we are seeing that. Not a knock on Kwon Alexander. It's just hard to come back from a torn ACL and be the player that you once were. All right, so he had a torn ACL. I talked about that, and then in 2019, the season that the Niners signed him, he had a torn pec injury. And when you have a torn pec injury, that's usually season ending. We saw it happen with J.J. Watt. We saw it again happen to Stephon Tuitt for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So injuries to torn pecs usually occur with front 7 defensive players, and that's what we saw with Kwon Alexander. Now, of course, we remember he came in and recouped enough to play in that deep playoff run, but it was really hard for us to see how good he was previously before that injury, because during that Super Bowl, he just wasn't looking the same. This year, the injuries start piling up again. In 2020, he had a high ankle sprain. So when you put all of those factors into effect, John Lynch was looking at it from a financial standpoint, saying, okay, he's really haven't done much. And the best availability is durability, so we need to cut the cord, because at this point, we are in salary cap hell next year. We have so many free agents coming up to be unrestricted free agents, and by cutting Kwon Alexander now, you're saving the team $6.1 million off the books next year. So when you look at it from that standpoint, and the team is barely mustering a 500 record, it makes sense to make this move now rather than later, because odds are they're probably going to release him at the end of the year anyways, due to the salary cap and the cap number that he would command. All right. So what do the Saints get? The Saints get a linebacker who, well, first of all, I covered all the Saints games this year. And the Saints are getting a linebacker who is very smart in underneath coverage in terms of being a pass defender in the underneath coverage and understanding his zones. He's also very good in the run game, but he does have missed tackles. So that's something that needed to be cleaned up, and hopefully he can get that cleaned up when he hits New Orleans. But the Saints' biggest weakness is their outside linebackers. The team drafted Zach Bond in the 3rd round this year, but he's not getting it done. Of course, the team has first-team All-Pro from last year, Demario Davis, coming back, and he's doing well, but he's not playing up to the level that they expect him to play. So something had to get done, especially if they're going to make a deep playoff run. And they're right in the thick of it, right? They can still win their division with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So by doing so, you bring in Kwon Alexander, someone who is a seasoned veteran who can play in this deep playoff run if he can stay healthy. And if he does stay healthy, they got a good one. Now, what people don't understand is you're reuniting a lot of pieces together, right? So when you take into account and connect all the dots, well, the Saints just signed Emmanuel Sanders from that Super Bowl squad. Now they get Kwon Alexander from that Super Bowl squad. So they're really gearing up for a Super Bowl contending team, and they're really pushing forward. Now, what do the 49ers get? All right, enough about the Saints. Let's talk about the Niners. Well, the Niners get Kiko Alonso. I am a huge fan of Kiko Alonso. One, because he's a Bay Area kid. Went to Los Gatos High School, CCS all-league champion. So we know what we're getting with Kiko Alonso, right? He's a 2013 second-round pick by the Buffalo Bills, was the Pro Football Writers Association pick for Rookie of the Year in that season, and then what happened? Injuries. Just like Kwon Alexander, he had injuries. So in 2014, he had a torn ACL, missed the entire year. 2015, missed 5 games due to tearing that ACL again, and the Buffalo Bills just had enough. And the GM, I believe, was Doug Whaley at the time, and he just said, you know what, we got to get something in return. So he traded him to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for LaShawn McCoy. And then when he was traded in 2015 that year, he was basically just trying to work things out. And then in 2016, he was traded again to the Miami Dolphins this time. And what happens in that year is he had a pulled hamstring, and that's not looking good. So Miami was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And then thankfully, he was staying healthy enough and did well, played well. And then what happened in Miami was Miami saw some value. New Orleans Saints said, we need a linebacker, just like they needed one this year. And they made a move at the trade deadline and traded him to the New Orleans Saints. And he actually tore his ACL again. Yes. So if you're thinking about it logically, let's break it down the timeline. 2014, torn ACL. 2015, missed 5 games due to a torn ACL in the same knee. And then in 2019, tore his ACL again. So what you're getting is GM John Lynch taking the Trent Baalke approach on the ACL injury players? I'm joking. That's not a hit on Baalke. I'm just putting it out there. That was a running joke around Levi Stadium. We called it the All ACL team, for those who don't know. So yeah. But what are the 49ers getting, though? Let's talk about the player. Let's stay on the positives, right? So what are the 49ers exactly getting, right? So they're going to run stuffing instinctive linebacker who can play sideline to sideline, smart, very, very savvy in pre-snap recognition, can play the run extremely well, and he's a perfect cultural fit for what GM John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan like to do. Now, the question mark is just with Kwon Alexander. Can the guy stay healthy? That remains to be seen. But if he can stay healthy, I think the 49ers got a steal in this one while picking up a 2021 conditional 5th-round pick in return. All right. Now, does this trade make sense for both organizations? I believe it does because, like I said before, the Niners weren't going to re-sign Kwon Alexander, re-sign him. They weren't going to keep him after the end of the year anyways because of the $6.1 million cap savings. They have so many free agents coming up for unrestricted free agency, and that something had to be done because they're not going to have enough money to pull from to retain all these players. You have Kyle Juszczyk coming up, you have Kendrick Bourne coming up, you have K'Wan Williams coming up. I mean, the list goes. Kerry Hyder's an unrestricted free agent. They need to re-sign him because he's proven to be a good, strong depth piece. So the list goes on. Jaquowski Tart. I mean, the list goes on. This is off the top of my head, and John Lynch knows this, and Parag Marathe knows this. So they're like, dude, we have to do something, and our season's not looking very bright anyways, especially with the news that George Kittle and Jimmy Garoppolo are out for the foreseeable future. Let's do something now. Let's recoup all our injured players, and let's prepare for next year. That's what I think they're doing. All right? So, good job by the 49ers GM John Lynch. Out of a scale of 1 to 10, I think it was, on a scale of 1 to 10 of grading this trade with 5 being average, I would give this trade an 8. So good job for John Lynch and the 49ers for striking this deal. And if Kwon Alexander pans out for the Saints, kudos to the Saints. But at the end of the day, like I said, you got to look at it from a financial standpoint and from a business perspective. At this point, Kwon Alexander is damaged goods. They need to get something in return and replenish through the draft. Well, that's it today. I hope you had and liked what I had to offer. If you did like what I had to offer, please subscribe and hit the like button or subscribe button in the lower right hand corner. You also can stay up to date if you go on my profile. You look at all my podcasts, can scroll through all of that as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for tuning in. BEASTwriter out. Peace.